Now, you've shown well, I want to talk about, because I found it very interesting, this monitor behind us.
Sure, yeah.
So to tell us, I think I'll let you tell the story, because I found it very interesting, because you've really discovered, and just put it forward, that there are other needs for other luminance level type applications, especially in the millennial market, which is pretty much the biggest market that we want to hit, and some interesting discoveries from the Bram and the sort of what his clients are asking him to do. So just bring us through how this...
Yeah, and honestly, I can't take credit for it. People were doing this before I knew they were doing it. But we have a mode on our monitors that basically allows you to go into this high bright mode, this outdoor mode. And it's not full HDR, but by any stretch of the imagination, we've been very careful to call it something like higher dynamic range or standard dynamic range plus, but it's definitely much brighter than standard dynamic range. We're doing it solely on our OLED panels at this point, which is an important fact here, because making something bright doesn't make it HDR. So this is wide gamut. This has the ability to about 350 to 400 nit peak luminance, depending on amount of screen coverage. And what we found is that for something like 1,000 nit plus, you need some sort of special EOTF. You can't go with a pure gamma like 2.4 or something like that. You need something like PQ, SC2084, HLG, something like that really mimics or is really designed to the human visual system. Absolutely. But the thing is, at 300 nit, PQ and things like that don't take advantage of the full bit depth, which is really a shame, because you have this nice 10-bit or 12-bit signal, and you're using sometimes half of it at these types of luminance levels. So what we found is that at 300 nit, a 2.4 gamma gives you almost no quantization, no banding, and you can simply set it to that, use 2.4, and grade almost like you would grade an HDR type scene, where maybe you keep the overall IRE levels down, but you're still getting nice bright levels, maybe around 80 to 100 nit for some average things, average highlights, and then your specular highlights you can get up to that 350, 400 nit range, and that's kind of what we're doing here. You see here, like practical example of this is that if you measure this is easily in the 250 nit, reflecting off the water, and the reason it's important is because there's hundreds of millions of these tablet devices out there that can't do HDR, and to just grade for SDR and have it brighter doesn't give you that kind of specular highlight effect where everything's nice and reflective in small areas. This allows you to grade for that target audience where they're using these 300 to 600 nit tablets. Almost every tablet on the market can hit at least 300 nit these days. So using something like this for a 300 or 350 or 400 nit peak luminance grade is a very effective way to take maybe existing HDR grade, a true HDR grade, and do a new pass on it to optimize it for display in that pipeline for those devices. And we think that that's a lucrative market. It's a new potential. So.
And when you told me about it, after doing a lot of, my coverage this year was all about high dynamic range and talking to many people about what's been happening, and having a look at, I'm talking to the manufacturers like Adobe's, etc., and discussing what's going to happen to the tablets and the computer screens. There's a very big problem, and I'll be honest, I've discovered in that we have these new high dynamic screens, but you understand, because part of production, if I'm making components for a high dynamic screen and I send to an artist in the back room, okay, I need a backplate painted in Photoshop for this scene, it's a high dynamic range. It's okay, I can't do a high dynamic range on anything. So how am I supposed to know how to paint it correctly for your high dynamic range finishing thing?
Absolutely.
Right? That's a big problem. In fact, the problem here is that computers, etc., have a long way to go. And I've been speaking to some of the manufacturers. When are we going to see new, like Apple and all the computer operating system manufacturers will have to redesign their graphics drivers, and the graphics cards, etc., will have to be redesigned to actually accommodate for different peak luminance compared to image and interface. You can't look at an interface when it's running at 1,000 nits. It doesn't work. So, but the interfaces are designed to work from 0 to 1. So when it's pure white, that interface will be burning your eyes out.
Absolutely.
So you can't have an interface and paint on the interface at the same time. And that's another example of a problem that you're sort of exposing on the other end of the argument.
Absolutely.
It's how do we get these images to the millennials who watch everything on tablets or on their computers.
Absolutely.
And so you're taking advantage of what can be done today.
Exactly. It's something that's being done today. And again, I can't take full credit for it. We saw that customers were actually doing this, and we're like, wow, that's a really clever idea. And there's a real market out there, and people are making money off of this type of workflow. And it's clever because what this gives you is a professional reference image still, a very nice uniform screen, accurate color gamut, things like this, that allows you to grade for those target consumer devices out there. And it's, like you said, it leverages the current technology, which is kind of cool. And it's not the only thing we're doing, but it's a first step in that direction. And I think it addresses a huge gap in the market right now, because we're all obsessed with HDR at these 1000 nit plus levels, and we see more and more companies talking to us about either doing grades like this or applying algorithms to HDR to try to get into this sort of range to address these tablet devices. Because let's be honest, I mean, I have 3 kids. They don't watch TV on a TV most of the time. It's on an iPad.
That's right. I have 2 kids too, and I understand completely.
Yeah. So
anyway, so that's fantastic. Very interesting. I really think you should go down to your FSI dealer or whoever you can get to and have a look at how it can work, especially if you're in that sort of distribution area.